me some love. Come on and bring me some love. I'm always ready. I'm always ready for love. Come on and bring me some love. Come on and bring me some love. It's up to you. So
That was Jodavino there, a brilliant band as well. And the guitarist from that band is Joe Philpott. So welcome into the studio, Joe.
Thanks, Sheena.
Thanks a million for coming in to see us.
Not a bother.
I was just thinking here, Peter's in studio with me as well, and I was just saying to him that there's so much to talk to you about. It's going to be a bit difficult to get a lot in, because you have so many experiences.
You're trying to say just don't shut up. There's an off button in there, I think.
No, you've done so many things that I want to talk to you about. I suppose the first thing to talk to you about really is your days in Rubyhorse.
Not guilty. All those no. Yeah, it was great. Sure, like, you know, there was 5 friends who were in school together from 13 years of age to, you know, form the band in second year, and, you know, kind of going through school together in a school band and leaving and then realising, okay, options, job, band. So we went and we decided to just keep the band going, and we kind of had I suppose a small little bit of a career around Cork, you know, in Ireland, in the same way that most young fellas would, you know, get in a bus and travel around the country, play gigs, and, you know, just have a laugh doing it. And you know, eventually then, you know, we kind of arrived at a point, I suppose, where we, you know, realised that if we didn't do something else, we'd probably have to stop. So we were all about 23 at the time, and we said, look, you know what, why don't we just do what most guys our age are doing, the J1s, and just go to America with our guitars. So we in January, with nowhere to live and no money, we got on an Aer Lingus plane to Boston.
I love the confidence in that, though. You know?
Yeah, well, confidence is one word.
Yeah.
Like, I suppose the Greeks took over the world with their philosophy, the Irish took over the world with a sleeping bag and a phone number.
Yeah.
So,
but you have to do it though as well.
Well, yeah, it was time to, you know, get off the pot.
Yeah.
And we did, and I suppose there was bets being taken in our local bar as to how quickly or not we'd be back, and people were waging that we'd be back, you know, by Christmas, and so were we. I mean, to be honest, it was really about going over there to fail, to actually put a full stop to this ridiculous idea of being in a band.
Out of the system,
So when we arrived over, literally when we hit the ground, just the energy of being 5 young fellas landing in Boston, it was hilarious. You know, we were like, okay, we have to survive. So we went out and we started making up. We actually walked into WBCN, which is the biggest radio station in the East Coast of America, asked to speak to Carter Allen, who was the top DJ there, and he was like, who's there? And we were like, we were Rubyhorse from Cork, and he came out. Now, having spoken to some bands from Boston, when we told them we did this, they were like we'd never think about it. But it'd be the same being here and say, walking into the RT studios and asking for Dave Fanning. You wouldn't get beyond security, but for some reason, when you throw away your safety net and throw away your crutch, you walk differently and you start to fly. And that's kind of what started to happen to us. And like all the plans that we had made in Ireland to try and survive as a band, and all the kind of premeditated kind of like scenarios we tried to set up to have people come see us, we did nothing like that out there, but all of that started happening. So I think, you know, in everyone's life there's a part of your life where you look at the zones, you know, and it's like a sport. We were in the zone, and every ball that was coming our way was working out, and it was almost out of our control, you know. So we kind of ran with that energy for ages. And
did it get very big very quickly?
To be honest, like, you know, it did, you know. I mean, like, without sounding, you know, strange about it, like we kind of started playing in a venue called the Burn, which was on the Tufts University campus near Harvard, on a Thursday night. And the reason we were playing there was because there was nothing going on there on the Thursday night. That's the only reason. As it happened, that area was very, because the rents were so high in Boston, in the city, this was a really cool area to live. So you had a lot of, like, you know, musicians, artists, students kind of all mingling together in the bar. So that venue started to become packed on a Thursday night. As a result of that, then we got offered a gig in Boston City, which was in a place called Bill's Bar, which would be a more conventional rock venue, sort of like Sir Henry's used to be in Cork, or even the Cypress Ave now, you know. So similarly, we started to fill the place. I mean, 600-700 people queuing up outside 2 hours before we came on, sort of stuff. Then like the record companies were like, huh? What? You know, typical, like, you know, and guys that hadn't bothered coming to see us over here actually ironically had to fly over to see us, you know, which was hilarious. We actually went for dinner with a couple of them. We were like, what? Like, you could have seen us in Cork, and they were like, oh, but this is much more fun, isn't it? And I was like, but you know, so those 2 gigs in Boston then led to massive industry interest, you know, because, you know, whether or not people liked what we were doing from an industry point of view, they had to pay attention to it. And the hoopla started then. Everything went bananas. Like we had, and at the time, there were 14 record companies at the time. There's only 3, I think now. There were 14 major labels. You had everything from, you know, EMI, Sony, Columbia, you know, Island, the whole shebang. And each of them would offer, each of them were offering, you know, they all took us on a kind of a tour of like their world.
For you, weren't they?
Yeah, it was. But there's a lot of bands go through that. I mean, it's not unique to us, you know. So I mean, I think at the time we thought it was. We thought, geez, we must be great, you know. And you know, you're kind of brought. You know, they pull out the stops. I mean, they took us to A&M. They brought Sting in to talk with us.
Wow.
You know, lots of different things, and we kind of, I suppose, it was a mistake in one way to kind of court with all these people, because we were basically speed dating, and like someone had to get dumped, and as a result we made 13 very powerful enemies. But in our minds it was like, look, we'd be fine, we'd come home for Christmas, and we'd go back and we'd tell the 13 people no, and we'd just sign, and that's what we did. But the problem with that then was the industry imploded. Why? Just after we got signed, what was 14 labels became 3. So we were part of the Universal mothership, and we were right at the bottom. And we worked our way up, you know. We got through it, and we made a good album, and we recorded Sparkle, which just played, and that was...
I was going to ask you, is the AIB soundtrack for Dear Ad, is it?
Well, I suppose we're probably the only few people who'd managed to get money from AIB in the last couple of years. They used it for their ad. You know, I always thought it would have made a good toothpaste ad, but you know, there's like, you know, no, there was a few things that happened as a result of that song. You know, like we kind of it went top 20. We did the Letterman thing. Conan, we sort of toured a lot, and you know.
Were you doing the college circuit for a while as well, Joey? Yeah?
We did everything, Trev. We kind of like, it was. Yes, there was college gigs. There were kind of we opened up for people, you know, different types of people. We toured. We did festivals. We did radio. Kind of. There's a great circuit out there. It's like if you have a song on the radio, big radio stations put on big summer concerts, and you end up playing on massive like bills. Like we played with Pink and Avril Lavigne and David Gray and all these kind of touring kind of festival type things. And you know, you're playing in front of 20,000 people every night. And they're not your audience essentially. They're sort of just a kind of a, you know, but you get your audience by playing those kind of gigs, and then you might come back a month later and play a smaller venue, like maybe 400 or 500 people, and as a result of the song being on the radio, and as a result of doing these kind of shows, you know, you kind of have your own little fan base building all the time, you know. So, did
you like the style of life, you know, being a rock star? Did you like that, or did it suit you, or did it just come to a point where you thought, I need to come back to bass, or
all of the above? No, I think at the start it was fantastic. You know, I think we all, I mean, I won't speak for all the lads, because we all had very different experience with it, but I suppose at the start it was amazing, because you can imagine, like, blow you away, everything was just 3 years of like, oh my God, this is like what, you know. And then the hardship that comes with it then is just the difficulties, I suppose, of, you know, the reality of it is like you're if you can imagine being with 4 other guys all the time, and every decision you have to make. If you want to move to New York, you can't, because we're based in, you know, and I suppose life, when we started having kids and growing up,
that changes so much anyway.
It does, like, and you know, you can kind of be selfish about it if you want to make that choice, and there's more power to you if you can. And if you want to live that life constantly. You see, we were kind of caught in the middle too. We weren't a hugely successful band earning, you know, millions. Like we were a working, touring band that was having moderate success. And I suppose if we had gone into another level, maybe things would have been different. Maybe we could have kind of married the two situations, but it was quite obvious to us as time went on that this was a real, you know, nose to the grind, and it's a hard life, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, if you
absolutely,
like musicians, if you meet musicians who are touring, if you meet them in their mid-40s, like they donate their bodies to science fiction, I think, when they die.
When did you come back? When did you start playing with Jodavino?
Well, we got back we did an Opera House gig in 2004. At Christmas, we all came home. And we all just kind of met afterwards, and we had a tour booked in America for that February, and we were due to go back. We were still signed out there, I think, and the record label were like, "What? You're not coming back?" You know, and we were like, "No, we just needed to. We'd been in the band for such a long period of time. We just needed to take a break, take the foot off the Rubyhorse pedal, and see what happened." You know, and I think we all arrived at that point. You know, so I decided to come back home. I just needed to be around family and things like that, and it just seemed I didn't want to go back to America. I never envisioned myself living out there without the band, you know, being the reason why I was there. So I went back out and stayed at home, and I got in touch with Joe Carey because he was the only phone number I had musician-wise in my now. He was due to pick me up to go to a rehearsal, and he sent his sister out, who's now my wife.
Yes, I know. I was going to refer to that as well.
Don't ever send your sister out to pick up a guitar player. It's the moral of that story. By the way, he married my sister, so he got me back. So I don't think initially the idea was for me to be involved in the band. They were just asking. They were looking to record an album at the time, and I suppose they were wondering. They were asking a lot of people, not just me, about different ways to go about it. And I suppose, having gone through what I'd gone through, they were interested to know, is that a route? You know, and we chatted, and eventually I, for some reason, ended up playing a guitar on a recording of a demo with them, and basically then that led to a gig, and then before we knew it, and Trev was involved.
Trevor, how long did you play with them, Trevor?
We were. It was a different guys. I think before you got there, I think Reggie, probably Carl Nesbitt used to play a bit beforehand as well.
Yeah.
So we'd done a few gigs.
So it's changed up quite a bit.
It kind of changed. Yeah, it was.
I saw you in the Everman. You were playing that night that you were in the Everman.
That's right.
That was Joey. Yeah,
that was brilliant, and a great band, you know. And I thought you would reach serious commercial success. To be honest with you, I thought you were going.
Yeah.
Are you stopped?
No, actually, we just, again, it was with the Rubyhorse thing, it was a full stop. This is just a comma.
Yeah.
So I think the idea is that we're going to at some point just review. We recorded an album in Nashville actually, and it hasn't been properly released yet. And we're, you know, Ivan and Joe are writing all the time, and it just, again, it was just a kind of a shuffling of things. Like, we got married, we had kids.
Yeah, of course.
Touring wasn't an option, you know. And what's great about Jodavino, though, is it's not a headache. Like, we're all kind of,
you're still enjoying it all the time.
We can't really get away from each other anyway, because we're all intermarried. So whether we're,
I think Yvonne is a lovely stage presence, hasn't she? She's perfect for the.
Oh, she's great.
The lead vocalist.
Yeah. She's
obviously you have to say all the right things.
I am. I've got it written on my hand here. She is great. She is a natural performer. Hang on, is that spelled right? P-E.
She's lovely. Yeah.
I just love their songwriting talent as well, because Joe and Ivan have a great list of songs, you know, and you just on CDs you're kind of counting the songs. You say it's a great song, it's a great song, great song you won't even hear as well, like, you know. So that's what I love about them. They're brilliant.
Great crowd, all right. But we need to talk about what you're doing now, because I find you're involved in a few schemes that are very, very. I love the fact that, you know, you're able to use what your experiences are and your musicality and everything to help young people. And we've been talking about it a few times, and I always believed in how good music is for people in many ways, in a therapeutic sense and so on. But will you tell us a bit about what you're doing yourself?
Sure. Well, it kind of started for me in 2009. I was part of a kind of a European training project that involved 16 European musicians, 4 from Ireland, to go to each other's countries and be trained by this organisation called Music e Santé, which is a kind of a music and health organisation that's existed in France for like about 25 years, 30 years now, I suppose. And they pioneered a kind of an approach with taking musicians into healthcare scenarios, settings, and forming partnerships with the hospitals and the different kind of systems and whatnot, and eventually becoming an actual part of the infrastructure of the hospitals. The approach is very, it's unbelievable actually, what they do and how they approach their work and how they build their work. So I went on that training course for a couple of years. We went to Poland, UK, France and Ireland, and we trained as musicians in healthcare settings. And as I was going along, you know, you're meeting different musicians, and I found the work fascinating for a start, and just really, really interesting, and the experiences you had with everybody from patients to patients' families, and all the kind of privileges you were allowed, like to be in intensive care with children and playing all different kinds of things. And I kind of realised that there was a much broader, I suppose, opportunity for the work to go into things like community settings, and and take that approach, take the approach that they teach. So I set up an evening in Cork, and I invited different organisations along, and I invited all the musicians that I know who work in this area along to speak about the work that they're doing, and I suppose present it and say, look, this is here if you think it might fit into your what you do. So people from probation contacted me, and I started working with the Westview project, which is probation for youth, and I started working with COPE, and I started working with Brothers of Charity, and subsequently then Music Generation approached me about doing some work with children in state care.
All right, yeah.
So all these projects then, I just designed projects for those organisations, and kind of outcomes, and kind of like, I suppose, goals from a point of view of music, and brought it into those scenarios, and formed partnerships and worked with the people, and decided, okay, well, how does music impact in here? And what approach do we take to make music happen within these walls? Because some of the environments are very challenging, and very often you think, well, why shouldn't music be in here? Like, why, if it helps in any way, can it, is it something that can, we can bring in, and can it evolve into something? In the case of the probation, it has. We did 2 summer camps now this year, which was a massive thing to do in a probation setting.
Brilliant.
And also with Glownaling, with the children in state care. I mean, the girls have subsequently gone on to record their own music, and they're really going. There's 2 of them now working with GMC. They're rapping, and they're really pushing themselves out from a career point of view. So it's amazing what can happen once you introduce music into a setting.
Well, I agree totally, Peter. You're working in community projects as well, and you're always trying to bring music to the kids, aren't you? In every way. Like, I mean, you're doing it in the community centres and different things, but it's very, very good. It has so many positive things, so
we do. But how the funding is probably a big thing as well for it. It's obviously a hugely worthwhile project, and you can see that affecting people all over the place. The music has a great part in people's lives, but it is to be able to sustain it, funding as well. That's
always a challenge, and I suppose, like, I've been lucky with the people I'm working with, like with Music Generation now, that it's kind of funded by U2 and the VC and people like that.
Is that stopping in 2015? Does the funding actually?
There's 5 years, I think. I'm not 100% sure about this now,
because we used to deal with them, obviously, and we dealt with you as well in many ways, like getting equipment, and this is the thing as well, you've discovered so many different instruments, I suppose, that wouldn't have been your typical thing. What you're saying, like, there's a lot of music therapists use chime bars and different vibraphones and things for people who have dyspraxia or autism and so on, because the neuroscientists now believe that it is actually helping with the brain waves, that they're regulating even moods and so on, and that if you give them a very fast, distinctive beat, they're very sharp and clear-minded, and if you give them a very soft, gentle beat, it's giving them a lull and a calmness. Isn't that kind of...
Definitely, and that's part of the training too with Music Asante. When you went over there as a guitar player, the first thing they did was took your guitar off you and give you an egg shaker and said, okay, now what would you do? Like, if you walked into a hospital scenario and you hadn't cleaned your strings in a week, or changed them, you'd done 2 gigs in a bar the night before, and you go into a high infectious scenario and you walk in with your case, and what are you doing? So you find yourself in this working scenario with an egg shaker, and then I was like, oh God.
So you have to adapt yourself to each situation.
They deconstruct you as a musician. You arrive in thinking, right, here I am now playing for the sick people. Wow, doesn't anyone know Danny Boy altogether now?
But do you find with each person that you're with, whether it's a sickness or even the different personality, that you have to adapt that then to the different person, whether it be, as Sheena was saying,
exactly what
an egg shaker, a guitar for maybe a tune or a melody or just a beat,
Well, it was amazing. I mean, like, you kind of have to, with the European training thing, you have to adapt to a culture as well. Like, we were in Poland and no one spoke English, in the hospitals we were in. So we were going in as Irish musicians. What are we going to do, So you had to kind of use your voice and use percussion as well, because percussion and voice and melody are kind of universal if you're not using a language. And very often you find in folk music, melodies kind of cross over, and they mean the same thing. So the art of the hum, like became great because everyone knows something like that, or a melody that's recognizable universally. Percussion is also a very interesting part of it because it's such an inclusive musical experience, I suppose, and it's something that people can partake in, together communally, as long as someone's holding down a beat. People can, and then, so that was a very interesting thing to kind of learn about within the context of that. I think the voice is a very important part of working in healthcare scenarios, being able to use song, I suppose, as a form, or just the voice in general as a form of expression. People tend to connect with that as well.
I think it's lovely. It must be lovely for you too to have, again, it's extended your experiences so greatly to be working with young people, and it kind of is an eye-opener, isn't it, really, to have children, to see children and see how they're suffering and see what you can do to help them, and just, we go on with our lives every day and we're not really aware of the suffering that's going on for so many people. And
people's families too. One of the things that I found with music in any setting, like, is if you're playing someone with Alzheimer's, like we did recently there, and there was a family that sang a song together, and the dad sang. Now, that was the first kind of family, well, according to one of the family members, that was the first actual family moment they've had since he's gotten really sick.
Neil Hannon's father has Alzheimer's, and he played piano a lot, and apparently that helped him an awful lot. Because of using both sides of the brain and everything. Well,
one of the things that's fascinating is with Alzheimer's, very often people forget family members, they forget their own name, but they still remember the words "Swell Tell Me Ma." So it's like you're singing a song with somebody, and it's like they don't know who is in the room, but they still remember that song. So I suppose the question is, what part of the brain is active? What's keeping that memory alive?
It's such an interesting subject. I'm going to have to stop talking to you about it, though, I'm afraid, because I could even got you to play a tune even, and there's so much we could discuss. But I think we'll have to do a full-length chat about all of this with you some other day. I'm going to play a track now by a musician called Ismail Lowe, and it's called Jamu.